Hi, thank you for joining us. My name is Amanda Shapiro. I'm a senior consultant at DCI Consulting, joined by Dave Cohen.
Hi.
And we're just here to chat a little bit about the Google matter that hopefully everyone's familiar with. And really this is a follow-up to a blog and client alert that we released on this past Sunday regarding a ruling that came out actually late Friday. And Dave wrote the blog, so I thought, it was a real quick blog and we just wanted to provide some follow-up information and really, Dave, get some more of your thoughts. So for anyone that hasn't read the full ruling or isn't 100% familiar with the case, I think one thing that we want everyone to keep in mind is that this is not a ruling or a case about paid discrimination or really discrimination at all. This case was all about denial of access. So anyone who's familiar with an OFCCP audit knows that throughout the course of the audit, there's requests for information, contractors turn over that information, sometimes can feel burdensome, and if access is denied and information is not provided, OFCCP may file a complaint, which is what happened here. And then again, just real quick recap, which the blog actually goes through this as well. What the case was really about, this denial of access, is a few specific points of information. So over the course of the audit, which started in, I think, September of 2015, OFCCP asked for a number of pieces of information, mostly focused on pay, which Google really did comply with. And then about last summer, there were a few requests which Google felt might be overly burdensome, or they were just uncomfortable providing just for confidentiality purposes. And so those three things that Google really started to question, and then OFCCP felt that there was a denial of access for were these three things. So there was an extra snapshot requested. So I think everyone knows in an OFCCP audit you submit a snapshot of active employees and a number of pay information. And so they asked for a snapshot from 1 year prior with many additional points of information. They also asked for salary history as well as job history information for all of the active employees going back to really the beginning of Google.
Yeah.
So almost 2 decades worth of information. And then they also asked for the employee contact information for all active employees. So those are really the three things that they asked for. And just to quickly sum it up, the judge did grant OFCCP the right to that snapshot data, but really limited to that information.
Similar to item 19.
Yeah, exactly. And he also said that employee contact information could be provided, but he limited that to 5,000 employees with the potential for 3,000 more, but really did reduce that down. And then he completely denied the request for pay history information as well as job history information. So now that we kind of all know those basic facts of the case, Dave was curious, what else you wanted to add, kind of your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I think the most significant part of the ruling, and full disclosure, we have done work for Google in the past, but I think the most significant part of the ruling is the salary history. I think that was the most onerous part of the request. Every compensation and salary decision that was made on employees going back almost 2 decades. Here's my takeaway on the ruling, is that the judge, during the course of the trial, it became clear to the judge that OFCCP just didn't understand Google's compensation practices. Whether OFCCP wasn't listening or they just didn't comprehend, the judge basically said, you really didn't understand the comp system. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I don't think this request for salary history data is relevant. In accordance with the Fourth Amendment. It's not relevant in scope, it's burdensome, and unless you can show me going forward why it would be reasonable, I am going to deny that request to get that data back to the beginning of time. And I think that's pretty significant for contractors. And I think the big takeaway is this. The judge said, look, OFCCP, Google provided a lot of information, and you didn't provide a lot of information back. So I think the takeaway for OFCCP is most contractors want to cooperate and do not want to get involved in a denial of access case. And the message is talk to and be transparent with contractors. Why are you asking for this information? How is it relevant? Am I taking burden into consideration? And I think the judge said, I'm going to require conciliation going forward. 2 parties, you'll need to talk and to come up with strategies and what's going to be reasonable going forward. So I think it was, to me, a major victory for contractors in that the judge is saying, you've got to justify this request and talk to contractors. And then the last thing is, it's important to try as best you can to educate OFCCP about your compensation system and what's relevant and what's not relevant.
Yeah, because I think in the ruling the judge even said, had the right questions been asked, had the right information been provided, he didn't think that this would have been necessary.
Yeah. And just one last point that I think is interesting, it was slightly touched on in the ruling, is whether or not the Ledbetter, the Fair Pay Act, would apply to OFCCP, even if they had access to job history and starting salary. Is that something that they can enforce beyond 2 years because of statute of limitations? And that's what the Ledbetter Act, the Fair Pay Act, did. But remember, Congress did not amend 11246 to apply the Fair Pay Act, so the judge was questioning whether or not that would apply. So more to come on this as we digest this. It's an interesting ruling. I think it's a significant ruling for contractors. And thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you.